All right. So we have great news, right? So we were able to sort out the projector, and so I'm going to jump right in since we're probably a little bit off schedule right now. So this talk is entitled "The Secrets," and it's actually a controversial talk. It's a talk that always leads to interesting debates with me and colleagues at other universities because I divulge many of what I believe are the key insights that can lead you to do top-notch research. And so I'm going to give this talk. I don't know how many more times I'm going to be giving this talk, but you'll have the pleasure of hearing my thoughts on this topic. So I'm a professor, assistant professor at the University of Michigan. I co-run the Clarity Lab with Lingjia Tang, who's going to give a talk later. You'll get to hear from her. We now have 13 students. Don't know how that happened, but we had people contributing to the lab, and they did so well, we just couldn't tell them that we wouldn't take them. So we have a lot of students now, super passionate team. I'm incredibly proud of the work that they do and the culture that we're fostering. And Mike Lorenzano recently defended. You'll also see him at PLDI. He has a talk on tomorrow of work that I'm also really proud of. So Clarity Lab is the name of the lab, cross-layer architectures and runtimes in 10 years. And the driving philosophy is designing across the stack, designing without boundaries. I'm not an architecture person. I'm not a system software person. I'm not a PL person. I'm a solutions person. And I care about these system architecture problems. And I'll solve the problem wherever it exists. We've been super duper productive in the last 3 years. And this is entirely due to the culture and the passion in my team. And I'm fortunate to be able to work with the incredible people that inspire me to work harder. But today we'll be talking about the secrets. Okay? These are the secrets to being a top-notch intellectual, what I believe are important insights to being a top-notch intellectual and an awesome researcher. Okay. The first thing is to be an awesome intellectual. The first thing is to realize the importance of identifying the right mentors and good mentorship. Steven Spielberg said, the delicate balance of mentoring someone is not creating them in your own image, it's giving them the opportunity to create themselves, right? If you discover someone in your life that takes an interest in you, that understands this, you gravitate to them. You appreciate that. And you understand the things that you don't understand about them and strive to gain that understanding. If you appreciate the power of good mentorship and the power that that gives you to grow yourself as an intellectual and as a researcher, that's going to be perhaps the most important skill that can impact your future, right? That's the key skill that I would attribute to my own personal success, is being able to understand that the folks around you and the insights that they have that you don't understand is a gift when they care enough about you to help you and to impart those insights to you. So this has really impacted my life. This is Naveen Kumar. This is the first researcher who was my first mentor as a researcher intellectual. He's a student. He was a student at the University of Pittsburgh, working with Mary Lou Sofa. And, you know, he took a liking to me. He used to call me his prodigy. You know, when we were in the lab, I was a really crazy undergrad, and you'll see later. I'll show you some pictures. But he really inspired me. I remember one key moment was when, you know, he saw me kind of slacking off on this class project for Bruce Childers. Bruce Childers is also at this conference. You can meet him, and I worked with Bruce a little bit along with Mary Lou Sofa. I was slacking off on this project. I was supposed to implement triple modular redundancy in Strata, which is a Dynamo. Dynamo is a binary translator. Strata is a binary translator. I was supposed to implement TMR, which is a reliability mechanism for faulty hardware, in a binary translator. And I was totally slacking on it. And he was like, dude, you're totally slacking on this. You're letting me down, right? Just go do it. Prove to me that you are my prodigy, right? I worked my butt off, and he was able to unleash potential that I didn't know I had by giving me the right words that I needed. Mary Lou Sofa is perhaps the most important of the mentors that impacted my life. She's a professor right now at University of Virginia. She was department chair when she was my advisor, and she understood how to bring the best out in people. One thing that she did, and she did extraordinarily well, is remove the mental limits that we impose on ourselves. We all have an idea of what we're capable of, right? Mary Lou Sofa knew how to convey that that is going to be your limiting factor, is what you think you're capable of. So when you think you've really hit your potential, that's when you should assume that you're underperforming, right? She was able to impart that insight. As soon as you feel like you're doing something well, that feeling is going to prevent you from doing better, right? She taught me that, right? High expectations, right? And never limit your expectations. This was another huge mentor in my life, Robert Hunt. He was my host on an internship, and he took a liking to me for no good reason. And that's how you can tell a good mentor. It's the folks that take an interest in you for no good reason to themselves. From his perspective, there's nothing I could really do to help him. He just cared to just see me do well, right? And so he would spend time imparting insights. And the one thing about this guy that impacted the way I perceived the world as an intellectual is, for him, there is no institution, there are no rules, right? Like you're in an environment, and you just do stuff in this environment, and that stuff could be good or bad, right? And you win when you win, you define your own metrics. This guy is extremely brilliant because he's the number one person. He's a manager, right? He manages a lot of people, and he'll always say, look, I'm going to tell you to do stuff, and I'm going to tell you what to do, and I don't care if you do that. I want you to understand what the outcome should be, and then do whatever you want, and just talk to me about the outcome. And so he says, if you tell me you followed my instructions, I won't be happy with you. This is not how he used to talk to me. This is how he used to tell me he talks to the people he manages at the company. I was an intern. And he'd say, Jason, here's really my management style, and here's what really works well. Here's how you'll discover the really bright people. The bright people will be able to function when you tell them that I don't care if you do what I tell you to do. I want you to extract the vision of what we're trying to accomplish, and then tell me how it's done, right? And so he was able to impart that with me. I mean, the best story I have is, he was working with Kunle a lot on this PPL at the time, pervasive parallelism lab. It's a big lab, tons of money goes through it from other institutions, companies, and so forth. And then he was like, Jason, why don't you start one? And I was like, dude, I'm a PhD student at the time, right? PhD students don't go start laboratories that companies give money to. But I tried, the DRL, the Data Center Research Lab. As a PhD student, I got a little website at University of Virginia for DRL, and I had a Google grant, that I helped write or whatever, right? And so I put Google there as one of the funders of this DRL. Dr. Sofa got a kick out of it. Well, but he kind of had this aura of just do whatever in the environment. There's no rules as to how you do it. Okay, for the sake of time, I'm going to move swiftly. This is packed with stuff. We haven't gotten to the controversial stuff yet. But take it from me that identify your mentors, latch on tight, hold on tight. It's a very deep relationship. It's deeper than a friendship, right? When it works well, okay? It's not, your mentors aren't going to be folks that are supposed to be your mentor. Your mentor will emerge out of the environment. If your best mentor ends up being an advisor, you're lucky, and grab onto that. But it doesn't have to be the case. That's a little controversial. And they're lifelong relationships, usually. That's how you can tell that they're good. When you select problems, only do what you like. Only select problems you care about. There will be problems that your advisor gives you, right? And you won't like them. A lot of students will work on a research project because there's a promise of a paper at the end. Absolutely the wrong way to think about research. You will not do your best work when it's your job, okay? You'll do your best work when you care about what you're working on. And if you're working on something you don't care about, you're etching away at the soul of what it means to be an intellectual and a great researcher, right? It's almost, you have to work on things you care about to do fantastic work. You should feel a sense of ownership of what you do and nudge your advisors. Great advisors love this, right? Great advisors love students that discover something, that teach the advisor a little bit something, pull the advisor a little bit out of the advisor's comfort zone to do something interesting. And students that can articulate why they're interested in it and compel an advisor to try things that are a little bit outside of the comfort zone. Advisors love that. Steer clear of advisors that feel like students are employees. That's a thing, okay? And want to just parcel out work. Steer clear of that. All right. Embrace the unknown. Stay out of your comfort zone. This sounds like standard advice, but it's very tangible when you get it, right? If you feel like you're doing a good job at something, or if you choose to do something because you know you can do it well, that's the easy road, okay? And you will not grow if you do that. Think about when you form a group on a project, right? You're in a class, there's some project, and you're like, oh, I'm the best coder in the group. I'm going to do that, okay? I don't know anything about, creating pretty diagrams, right? So I'm going to let someone who's done a lot of that do that, but I'm going to do that thing I'm really good at. You're not going to be able to grow. You should seek opportunities to grow. And the key insight, that doesn't mean do things you know you're not good at, right? If you know you're terrible at something, it's not necessarily growth to force yourself to do that. But if there's something that you don't know how good you are, or you've never done it before, that's how you grow. That's how you grow your talents. But embrace the unknowns. Be convinced. This is part of choosing your own work. Make sure you have a convinced culture. Don't take people's word for it because they have authority. Often, authority figures are wrong in big ways, right? But you have to make things a dialogue with submitting papers. For me, I see it as a dialogue. With my students, I teach them that it's a dialogue with the community. You care about something. You care about a piece of work. You want to invest your time and energy to solve a problem that you think is important. You think you've done a great job. You love your paper. You send it out to the community. That's not, I'm sending my paper out to the community to be judged, and then the community will tell me if this is good enough. It's a dialogue. You're starting a conversation. That submission, here, community, this is what I have to say about this problem. The community is going to get back to you with reviews. They may say, like, oh, there's all these problems. When you're convinced by the community that something is fundamentally wrong with your work, only then can you downgrade the conference. Only then can you start to think about, oh, well, let me not work on that anymore and just get it out and do something with it, right? You continue that dialogue until either you're convinced or the community is convinced, right? Having a convinced culture is going to take you far. There's a paper coming up at ISCA next week that was, Mike Lorenzano, I just mentioned he graduated. It was the first paper I wrote with Mike Lorenzano when he joined my group. It is the highest reviewed paper I've ever had in my entire career, coming at ISCA, and it was rejected for 4 years, right? It's a paper that has to do with binary translation, hardware binary translation, things like Transmeta, Denver. Well, Denver and Parker. Now Denver and Parker are on the critical path, but 4 years ago, it wasn't an interesting technology. Transmeta was old news. But we love these ideas, right? This was a passion project, and we weren't convinced. So over the first couple iterations, we changed the paper significantly to make it the best possible realization of that story, of that narrative. And then we submitted it like once a year the last 2 years, but never downgraded it simply because we weren't convinced that there was something wrong with work. Now that NVIDIA is doing some interesting work with Denver and Parker, and that team is growing, the timing is right for this work, and it was the best reviewed paper I've ever seen coming up at ISCA. It's a great paper, but the timing was off. The dialogue, I mean, a lot of students would give up. After a couple of rejections, they get discouraged. But if you have an appreciation for this dialogue notion, that's a great foundation to do work. And the community, timing is a huge aspect as to how your work will be treated. Just continue that dialogue. Now, how could you not get discouraged? I'm going to get to the controversial stuff right now, right? Because I actually haven't looked at the time. Okay, I don't even know when I started, so I can't even tell how far I've gone. Okay, 2 minutes? Okay, so how do you not get discouraged? I'm going to end with this. It's something I call PLP, paper level parallelism. Professors have student level parallelism. Professors do this all the time. But students, when you are working on one paper and it's submitted, and you work on the future work of that paper, and then you get rejected, you have to either combine the future work with the current paper or let that future work wait until the current paper gets in, because there's a sequential dependency on when the papers need to get in, et cetera, right? So when you work on one idea and you write the first paper, and then you continue with future work, or you wait and lollygag until you get a response, a year might go by, 2 years might go by, and there's one idea that could be rejected for 2 years. Students get discouraged and want to quit often at this point. What we do and what I impart on my students is, when you submit a manuscript, the next thing you work on should not have a sequential dependency on that manuscript when it comes to publication. It should be able to retire out of order, and you should have 3 threads in flight. We are researchers. We can work on 3 research ideas at the same time, right? When you submit a paper, it could be related onto the same topic, but what happens, what you'll find is papers will retire out of order. The paper you're most excited about will take the longest to get in. The paper you find most boring will get in sooner, right? And this is to manage your morale, right? And it's diversifying your research profile. Okay, so I'm gonna stop with that. And just as a final slide, I'll just leave you with some pictures of me. I know I promised at the end I would talk a little bit about me and tell you my secrets. But this is the end of grad school, and that's Lingja. And Bubble Up was the work I was best known for when I graduated. So I'll leave you with this picture and open it up. It's a dialogue. Have you ever been in an argument and you just weren't convinced? The community is fallible. The whole community as a whole is fallible, right? There are ideas that the community gets excited about and pursues that are terrible ideas that never change the world, and vice versa, right? And so you shouldn't be able to come to an impasse in that dialogue. If they say, well, we don't believe the idea because the evaluation needs to be stronger, you go work on that evaluation. If they don't think it's an important problem because it's not motivated well, you should think to yourself, is it an important problem? If you really still believe it's an important problem, you need to articulate that not reconciled thing with the community. Either the community is wrong and it is an important problem, and you need to give them the right stuff in the paper to convey your ideas, or you're misguided and it's not an important problem, and the community, and you may come to a realization of this after this dialogue, right? So it should come from that dialogue. If you don't agree, persist, right? And PLP is what will let you not despair, right? Because if you have one idea that's taking you 4 years to convince the community, you could still be right. The community could be wrong for 4 years, but you'll also have another paper, another direction that, if you're losing 3 arguments at the same time for 4 years, something might be, something might be a little, That's a fantastic question, though, and that's the key question. Yeah. And the thing is, it's your duty as an intellectual to continue to create that story, right? Like, if you need to go and talk to the groups, like one-on-one, and have actual debates with people, right? Like, I'll tell my students, you want to go talk to any group in the country, I will fund your trip, right? Because it's important. This intellectual discourse is important to engage, even when there's prejudice against certain ideas. And the bar for demonstrating the value just goes up. And the thing is, you just have to take it. You have to do that extra. You have to work twice as hard because the bar is twice as high. It's unfortunate, but if you really believe in what you're doing, if you really care about your work, it's worth it. Because when you hit that bar, everyone will love you and remember you for it. You know what I mean? So these are just a few. There's more, but let's talk offline. I'll be around. So yeah. I think it's thanks. Yeah, thanks. Yeah.